final photo of Everly and Lydia Livingston simply looks like two sisters on a flight home. The flight was American Airlines Flight 5342, and the girls are sitting in their seats and smiling. Their mother, Donna Livingston, had taken the photos and sent them to a family friend, Jin R. Longerbeam, not long before the flight left Wichita, Kansas for Washington, D.C. There was also a selfie of Donna and her husband, Peter, in their own seats. At the time, these were ordinary travel photos, the kind families send without thinking too much about them. Proof that everyone is on the plane, proof that the trip is almost over, proof that home is next. Everly and Lydia had been in Wichita for an ice skating camp for young Olympic hopefuls. They were members of the Washington Figure Skating Club and shared their routines online under the name Ice Skating Sisters. To people outside that world, they were two young athletes with bright futures. To their rink community, they were already known. Wolf Jin, a friend and skating teammate, later described them as two of the brightest people at our rink and said the community looked up to them. Their father, Peter, had built part of the family's life around helping them chase that dream. A friend said he once made a backyard skating rink during the winter, laying down tarp, boarding it off, and pouring water into it so it would freeze in the Virginia cold. During COVID, when rinks were closed, that homemade ice gave the girls somewhere to keep practicing. That detail makes the final photo even harder to sit with, because the girls were not returning from some random journey. They were coming home from something that represented years of effort, family sacrifice, early mornings, cold rinks, and the kind of childhood built around a passion.
Crash, crash, crash. This is alert 3. Crash, crash, crash. This is alert 3. Towers reporting a CRJ and a helicopter crash. You can tell me whatever.
Just before 9 p.m. on January 29, 2025, Flight 5342 was approaching Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport when it collided mid-air with a US Army Black Hawk helicopter over the Potomac River. There were 60 passengers and 4 crew members on the plane and 3 soldiers on the helicopter. All 67 people on board the 2 aircraft lost their lives. When news of the crash broke, Jin R. Longerbeam and her son drove to the airport still hoping the Livingston family had somehow survived. They brought coats for the girls. Wolf kept saying they would be cold and that they needed to make sure Everly and Lydia were warm. That hope is one of the most devastating parts of the story. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where someone is hoping for a positive outcome. They are still optimistic, but deep down you know that very shortly their heart is about to be broken. It's one terrible part of the human experience. Expoland had been part of Osaka's public memory for decades, before one accident changed how people saw it forever. The park opened in Suita, Japan, in 1970, originally as the amusement zone for Expo 70. Over the years, it became a major family destination, with more than 40 rides and attractions, including multiple roller coasters. For generations of visitors, it was the kind of place associated with school holidays, family days out, crowded queues, and the ordinary excitement of being somewhere built purely for fun. One of its biggest attractions was Fujin Raijin 2, a stand-up roller coaster manufactured by Togo. It had 6 cars, traveled along more than a kilometer of track, and had operated for around 15 years. Then, on May 5, 2007, during Japan's Golden Week holiday, the ride suffered a catastrophic mechanical failure. It was Children's Day, one of the busiest times of the year for amusement parks. As the coaster was running, an axle broke due to metal fatigue, causing part of the train to derail and strike a guardrail. A 19-year-old university student named Yoshino Kogawara lost her life. Around 20 other passengers were injured, with some reports also noting that onlookers were taken to hospital after becoming unwell from witnessing the aftermath. Photographs from the scene show the train stopped awkwardly on the track, emergency responders surrounding the ride, and the bright, cheerful structure of the coaster suddenly turned into something completely different. The investigation found that none of the axles had been replaced for 15 years. Expoland was later cited for faulty maintenance, and similar cracks were found on another train. 3 park employees were eventually found guilty of professional negligence and falsely claiming that regular checks had been carried out. Expoland did reopen, but the damage was permanent. Attendance collapsed. As one spokesman later said, "We couldn't regain the people's trust." By 2009, the park was closed for good. A place built for memories became remembered for one preventable failure. Julius and Ethel Rosenberg are handcuffed, leaning into each other inside a prison van outside the federal courthouse in New York City. The image was taken in 1950 after they were arraigned on atomic spy charges, literally moments before their final walk at Sing Sing. A married couple, physically restrained, surrounded by the machinery of the state, holding on to the only thing still fully theirs. Julius and Ethel were accused of helping pass classified American information to the Soviet Union during the early Cold War. Their case unfolded in a period of intense anti-communist fear, when the United States was newly aware that the Soviet Union had developed its own atomic weapon far sooner than many had expected. Julius was alleged to have been part of a Soviet spy network. Ethel's role has remained far more contested, with later debates focusing on whether she was actively involved, merely aware, or used as pressure against her husband. They were convicted of conspiracy to commit espionage in 1951. On April 5th of that year, both were sentenced to death. From that point, the case became more than a trial. It became a public battle over guilt, punishment, politics, anti-Semitism, and Cold War panic. Supporters argued the Rosenbergs were being made examples of. Critics saw them as traitors, whose actions had helped a hostile power. Around the world, campaigns for clemency grew. Writers, artists, scientists, and religious figures appealed for their lives to be spared. Even Pope Pius XII asked President Dwight Eisenhower to intervene. He refused. On June 19, 1953, after failed appeals and a brief legal delay, Julius and Ethel were taken to New York's execution chamber at Sing Sing. They did not give formal final statements. Earlier that day, they had written one last letter to their sons, Michael and Robert, who were only children. In it, they maintained their innocence and told the boys, "Always remember that we were innocent and could not wrong our conscience." The letter ended with a line that makes the photograph feel even more powerful. "We press you close and kiss you with all our strength." That is what the image came to represent. Not just a kiss between husband and wife, but the compression of an entire family into one unbearable final gesture. Julius went first. Ethel followed soon after. They became the only American civilians executed for espionage during the Cold War. Witnesses reported that Julius and Ethel Rosenberg sang the socialist anthem, the Internationale, as they were strapped into the electric chair. Decades later, declassified records strengthened the case that Julius had been involved in espionage. Ethel's case remains more disputed, especially after her brother David Greenglass admitted he had given false testimony about her typing notes, partly to protect his own wife. So, the photograph survives as a moment frozen and a final goodbye, before a punishment that can never be undone. In the autumn of 2025, Rob Reiner was promoting Spinal Tap 2: The End Continues, the long-awaited sequel to the mockumentary that had helped make him one of Hollywood's most distinctive comedy directors. He had spent decades moving between acting, directing, politics, and family life, but the press run also brought him back to one of his most personal projects, Being Charlie, the film he directed in 2015, co-written by his son, Nick. During an NPR interview with Terry Gross, Reiner was asked about Nick's struggles with addiction and whether he ever felt he had been too busy to pay attention to him. Reiner rejected that idea while still admitting he had made mistakes. Then he said something that, in hindsight, feels painfully difficult to hear. He said Nick had been great, had not been using substances for over 6 years, and was in a really good place. Around the same period, the family appeared together at the Los Angeles premiere of the new Spinal Tap movie, posing on the black carpet. And not long before the end, there were quieter family images too. On his daughter Romy's Instagram, there were photos and videos showing Rob in relaxed, affectionate moments with her. 2 days after Thanksgiving, Romy shared what would become one of the most haunting final images. She and her father floating in turquoise ocean water, both in swimsuits, Rob wearing a Spinal Tap baseball cap. The caption was personal and grateful. Romy wrote that she was thankful for family, health, and followers of any age. At the time, it looked like a normal family post. Later, it became one of the last public glimpses of Rob alive, seeing him as a family man rather than just for his body of work or public persona. The final days became harder to understand. On December 13th, Rob and his wife Michelle attended Conan O'Brien's Christmas party, reportedly bringing Nick with them. Some reports said Nick had not been invited, but his parents brought him because they were reluctant to leave him alone due to recent behavior. Witness accounts described him as unsettling at the party, asking guests their names and whether they were famous, and reportedly arguing with his father. The next day, Rob and Michelle were expected to have massages at home and later dinner with Barack and Michelle Obama. When a massage therapist arrived and no one answered, Romy was contacted. Police were called at 3:38 p.m. Rob and Michelle were found no longer alive, inside their Brentwood home. Authorities later said they died from multiple sharp force injuries. That night, Nick Reiner was arrested near USC, around 15 miles away. He has since been charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances. The case remains ongoing. Afterward, Jake and Romy Reiner released a statement saying, "They weren't just our parents, they were our best friends." Even though I'm from the UK, I still feel like the Chuck E. Cheese animatronics have been part of my life. And so I feel like with the loss of the animatronics, there comes a loss of childhood, the loss of a time that we can't get back, and a painful nostalgia that honestly hurts to consider. They were stiff. Their movements weren't perfect. Their eyes had that strange glassy look that made them feel somewhere between a cartoon character and a machine pretending very hard to be alive. But that was also the point. For decades, this was part of the magic. You walked into a noisy pizza restaurant full of arcade machines, birthday parties, spilled drinks, flashing lights, and somewhere in the middle of it all, there was a band of oversized mechanical animals performing on a stage. And now, in most places, they are gone. Chuck E. Cheese began in 1977, when Atari co-founder Nolan Bushnell opened the first Pizza Time Theater in San Jose, California. The idea was unusually ambitious for a family restaurant. It was not just pizza, it was arcade games, tickets, prizes, music, and a Disney-inspired animatronic show designed to entertain children while they waited for food. At the center was Chuck E. Cheese himself, joined over time by characters like Helen Henny, Mr. Munch, Jasper T. Jowls, and Pasquale. For children, they were part of the furniture of growing up. For adults, they were sometimes unsettling, sometimes annoying, and sometimes just background noise during a chaotic birthday party. But looking back, that is what now makes them feel so special. They belong to a world where entertainment still felt warmer, more genuine, more real. Yes, they were created to make money, but I can't help but feel there was some soul there. And that's not something I feel anymore about anything. That era has been slowly disappearing. In recent years, Chuck E. Cheese has been remodeling its restaurants, replacing the animatronic bands with video walls, interactive dance floors, trampoline zones, and updated arcade attractions. The company says the brand has survived because it changes with the times, and from a business point of view, that makes sense. Today's children are used to digital entertainment. Screens are cleaner, easier to update, and far less complicated than maintaining a full band of aging mechanical performers. But there is still something, frankly, sad about it. At one Chicago area location in Gage Park, the animatronic band was removed ahead of a remodel, ending the last local run of Munch's make-believe band in that area. Across North America, only a tiny number of corporate-owned locations still have versions of the old band. Some of the retired robots now sit in a warehouse in Topeka, Kansas, kept partly for spare parts, and partly as preserved pieces of a company history that is almost 50 years old. That image feels weirdly powerful, weirdly haunting. I don't know if I would want to be on night shift security at the warehouse. That's all I'm saying. Sadly, this is just what time passing often looks like. Some moments announce themselves, but most don't. Most just happen. Little changes build up, and before you know it, you're living in a different world. Small decisions here and there over 50 years has led to a moment where, in this small way, the old world is now just gone. And that is why the old photos feel so strange now. They are not just pictures of outdated restaurant mascots. They are pictures of a version of childhood that was physical, imperfect, and local. A time when birthday parties smelled like pizza and cola-soaked carpets. And when a band of clunky animatronic characters could somehow feel like a major event. The new Chuck E. Cheese may be cleaner, safer, and more modern. Kids today may love the dance floors and screens just as much as another generation loved the old stage shows. But for the people who remember the animatronics, their disappearance feels like another small door closing behind us. Excuse me while I have an existential crisis over a robotic rat. Thank you so much for watching. I'm uploading daily true crime and dark content here on this channel, so make sure that you're subscribed, hit like on the video, and also drop a comment so you get shown more of my stuff. Please do be careful out there, and I'll see you tomorrow.